and thank you for joining me. Today I'm going to be showing you how to make this super easy no route room box. So the overall measurements of the room box, and that's the outside edges, are 300mm wide, that's 11 7/8 of an inch, by 220mm high, which is 8 5/8 of an inch, by 230mm deep, which is 9 inches. And you'll find the cutting list for the pieces in the description box below. And to build the room box, I'm using these 3mm thick plywood sheets, and these are 300mm square, and that is just over 11 3/4 of an inch. And for the room box you'll need 9 of these sheets, and there will be a little bit left over as well. Now I found this really easy to cut using my Swann Morton craft knife and a 10A blade, and it was easy to cut both with and against the grain. And I've linked to these in the description box below, and they're available from Amazon. Okay, so let's get started. So begin by cutting the pieces shown in the cutting list, and I would advise that as you go along you write the name of the piece onto each sheet and onto the strip pieces as well, and then we won't get in a muddle. So I've got all of my pieces here, and we're now going to start gluing them together. So each of our panels, base, top and sides, are going to be made up of double thickness ply, and if you see what I've done here, we're using the strip piece to create the groove which will be the slot for the other panels, and that's why this is called a no route room box, because rather than routing a groove into a thicker piece of wood, we're creating it by sandwiching two pieces together. The only piece we won't be doing that with is the back panel, so you can put that piece somewhere safe for now. Okay, so we're going to start off with our top piece. So I've got the top piece there, the top piece liner and the route strip, and I've also got here an offcut of one of the sheets, which I'm actually going to use just to make sure that we're leaving enough space when we position the route strip. And I always recommend that when you're cutting by hand, because no matter how careful you are, you may have cut just any of the pieces slightly larger or slightly smaller, and even if that's by 1/4 or 1/2 millimetre, you'll still find that your measurements are slightly out. So we're going to begin then by gluing the route strip along a long edge of the top piece. So just make sure that you've got your top piece there, which is the largest piece, and just pop the top liner to one side for now. So I've got a bit of glue here on a card, which I'm going to apply just to the strip to begin with. And then I've also got a brush here, which I'll use to apply the glue to the larger pieces. Otherwise you'll be there all day applying glue with your cocktail stick. So apply glue along the route strip. Make sure you get it right along the edges and up to the ends of the strip, and then position that along the long edge of your top piece. And then if I just turn that around, what you can also use your offcut for is just to make sure that that is right along the edge of that piece, so that it's not sitting in. Like that. So press that into place, and then just take care to remove any excess glue along the strip, because if that dries then that will hinder the next panel from going in, or the back panel in this case, which will be slotting into the back of this top piece. So just remove your excess glue, give that a press, And I'm now going to apply glue to the rest of this piece. So we're going to need a little 3mm groove along there. So just sort of try not to apply it too close to your strip, but apply it to the rest of your sheet. I may need a little bit more, but I'll just leave it at that for now, and then spread it out with your brush. Again, making sure you get it right along the edges. Okay, so I've just applied a little bit more glue, and I also took that bit off the card there as well. Okay, so spread that out evenly. And then just slot your spare piece into place like that, your offcut, so that it's right up against the route strip there. And then put your liner into place, so that that will sort of move easily in there. Now I can already tell that I've got a little bit overhanging along this back edge, but that's fine, because what we'll do is we'll go around all of our panels once the glue has completely dried and trim off any overhangs. And like I say, don't worry if that happens, because, you know, when you're cutting by hand, things aren't always going to be exact. Okay, so press that down, take your spare piece out before the glue starts to grab it, and then what I'm going to do is just secure this with my strongest clamps. So I've got these nice sort of big tight ones here, which I'm going to put one at each corner. And it's really important that you do secure your pieces, otherwise as the glue begins to dry, the wood will start to peel away, or the sheets will start peeling away from each other. And then what I'm going to do is actually use some masking tape as well, and just pull that nice and tightly around all of the edges. And that's just because I haven't got too many clamps, so I'm not going to have enough to do all of the panels all at the same time, and I'd really like to get them done this afternoon. So once you've got the first clamps in place, then you can use some tape to pull that in on all sides. So just tuck it around like that, pull it nice and tightly and press it down so it's not going to peel away. I'm going to put a couple of pieces at each end as well, and that piece can be put to one side to dry. Okay, so we're now going to move on to the base piece, and same thing again, we're going to begin by attaching the strip along the first long edge. So apply glue to the strip again. And again, just make sure that you've actually got the base piece there and not the liner, which is smaller. Glue the strip into place. Use your offcut to make sure you've got that nice straight edge all the way along. Just press the piece up against it like that. Just turn that around. We're now going to apply the glue to the entire area, but what I've also got here is a piece of acetate, so that I can actually check that that will fit in at the front as well, because our second strip here, which will go there, and then our panel in the centre, will leave another little groove, but that's just for a piece of acetate, and that's only going to be 1 millimetre thick, but we still need to make sure that that will fit nicely in there. So apply glue now to the entire sheet, just leaving a little area or clear area along the front of your first strip, but I'm not so worried about leaving a clear area at this end where we're going to be putting the acetate. So again, make sure you spread that out right along the edges, And then use your offcut to make sure you've got that space there. And then bring your base line in and attach that so it's right up against your offcut. But so that you're sort of not trapping it in there, it needs to be able to move. Otherwise, when we come to sort of fit the box, you'll find that you sort of haven't got enough room. Dip that in there like that. And then what we want to do at the same time is put our thinner strip into place, or our narrow strip. And I can already see there that I've got enough room for the acetate. What I'll do is I'll just line that up along that back edge. As well, don't worry if you've got any overhangs at the sides, because again we'll trim all of those off at the end. Like that. Try your acetate just to make sure, and that's fine, there's plenty of room for that in there. So again, attach your clamps in the corners, final one there, and then again I'm going to put some strips of masking tape around. Like that, and that piece as well can be put to one side to dry. So the same thing again with your side piece. Put your front strip into place, apply your glue, and then apply the panel, making sure you're not trapping your piece in there too tightly. Press it down, forward a little bit, and bring the other strip in. Glue that along the front, and again I can see there that I've got plenty of room in there for my piece of acetate. I'll just check that again because I moved it slightly. Just going to go along there with my cocktail stick, get out any excess glue. And then this piece as well can be secured and left to dry, like so. And then do the same thing again with your remaining side pieces. So whilst those pieces are drying, I'm going to apply wood dye to my acetate strip pieces. And what we'll be doing with these is sandwiching the acetate between these two, the thinner strips, and then this piece will glue on top. And this will sort of act like a handle for us to put the acetate in and out of the slot at the front of the room box. So if you do want to colour the pieces, then now is the time to do that, just so that we're not going to get any glue or paint or wood dye actually onto the acetate once it's fixed in. So I've got my walnut wood dye here, and I'm just going to apply one sort of good coat to all sides of each piece. Okay, so I'm now going to leave those to dry and go and see if my panels are dry. So once your panels are completely dry, just check over each one, and you want to make sure that you've got nice flush edges along each side. So if you've got any that are sort of slightly overhanging, if I show you there on one of my sides, part of the strip and just a little bit of the panel there is overhanging. Because that's quite a bit, I'm actually going to use my craft knife to cut that away. But if you just had a little bit of unevenness, then you could just use your sandpaper flat on your work surface like that and sand along each edge. But like I say, I'm going to use my knife just for this one. And it just takes less time to do it with your knife than, you know, sanding. Really easy to cut into like that. I'm just going to have to turn away from you so I can get in there. And then just cut along the edge like that. And then you can still give it a bit of a sand after you've cut, just to smooth it off. and just go along in the one direction like that so that you're not going to round the edges. So do that with each piece. Okay, so we're now going to dry fit the room box together. Now, I'm not actually going to be gluing it together today because I am going to be decorating the inside, and that is so much easier to do before you've actually put it together. And then what I'm going to be doing between now and the run up to Christmas is actually turning this into a Christmas room box, a lovely cosy Christmassy living room. And I'll be sharing everything I do here on YouTube. But I just thought I'd upload the room box first so that if you wanted to get all the materials and make the room box so that you're ready if you wanted to follow along with me when I begin that project. And hopefully I'll be beginning that within the next sort of 2 to 3 weeks. So what I'm actually going to do now is just dry fit it together and then just put a little bit of masking tape on it to make sure that I'm happy with the fit. We can then fit the acetate panel into place as well, but I won't actually be gluing it until it's all decorated and ready to start moving in. Okay, so the first thing to do then is slot your back panel into place, obviously in your back slot, and the wider slot is always going to be at the back of the room box on all of the panels. And then bring in your first side, and that sits on top of your base piece and flush along the side of it. So that will go like that. I'm just going to turn that slightly so that you can actually see what I'm doing. And so that that doesn't keep sort of caving in like that, I'll just put a little bit of masking tape around the side just to hold it into place. And I advise that you sort of do the same as you go along, because you'll get a better idea of the fit if you actually secure it. Let me just move you up a little bit there as well. So let me just put a couple of bits of masking tape around the sides and onto the back panel, making sure that that side panel is flush with the side of the base here. Like that. Make sure the panel is pushed right in and at the bottom of the side piece as well. I'm also just going to put a little bit onto the side and onto the bottom, onto the base, and just carefully just slot a bit under there. Like that. That should hold that together. I'll pop a little bit at the top as well. Like that. Then bring in your other side, and the same thing again. Going together really nicely actually, really pleased with that. The lines along the front are lining up. I've still got a tiny little bit of an overhang here, just with the actual side panel is a little bit longer than the strip there. So I'll trim that off once we've done this. That won't make any difference to the actual sort of internal fit of the box. So I'll just put a few more bits of tape around that side, like that, and then the top piece will sit on top like that, so that it's slotting in to the back panel there. Slot that down. Now push your sides in again, so the sides of your top is flush with your side pieces. And then we've got a bit overhanging at the front, which is for our acetate strip. So the widest strip that we just applied the wood dye to will sit along there, and the acetate will drop into the slot. I'm going to put a bit more tape around just to hold this top piece into place, but just feeling around there, I'm really pleased with how that is all fitting together. That feels like it's up a little bit. Let me have a look. That may be sitting up just because it's not in there properly, or because it's a little bit too long, and I actually think that's a little bit too long. This side's sitting right down, and this side, as you can see, is just sitting up. So I've either cut my piece of wood here a a little bit longer at that side. In fact, just looking at it from the front, I can see that's what I've done. I've got more sticking up there. So I'm going to trim a little bit off there and then we'll try again. Okay, so I trimmed probably less than 0.5 millimetre off of that back panel, and that now fits really nicely together. So I've now got a nice square box. So what you want to do now is just measure in between these grooves at the front. So just hold your rule above and measure sort of the internal measurement going along there. Now it should work out at 294. I'm going to do mine at 293.5. I think if I do it at 294, that's going to be a bit of a tight squeeze. And the height will be the height of your A4 acetate sheet, or the height of an A4 sheet of paper. So bring in your acetate sheet. And what I've done here is I've measured a piece of A4 paper across to measure 293.5, and then I've just done that line along there, and I'm then going to stick that to the back of my acetate sheet, just with a little bit of masking tape. Just put a piece on each corner like that. Just to hold it straight on there, and then you can actually trim that to size, and that's a much easier way of actually making your measurement. I'm not sure, because of the light in here, whether that is actually picking that up. So I've got a line across there on my paper. I've attached that to the back of my sheet, and I'm going to just trim along that line. Like that, and you can then remove your tape. Okay, so then try your sheet into place. That should just slot nicely into the groove along the bottom there as well. There we are. And that will obviously be easier to do once we've actually got the strip on top. Okay, so now let's glue our strips along the top of our acetate. So to glue the acetate to the strips, I'm going to be using Deluxe Materials Glue and Glaze, which is specifically for gluing plastics, and it's really good because you don't need much and it doesn't fog the acetate, and if you do sort of get it somewhere where you don't want it, it just easily sort of peels or rubs off. So I'm actually going to apply this along the top of the acetate, and I'm just going to put a very sort of thin strip right along the top there. You don't need much of this, as I say, so one bottle will last you a long time. Like that. And then take the first strip, and I'm just going to sit that along the very top of the acetate, and so that I've got about 3 millimeters overhanging at each edge, or so that it's sort of sitting evenly along the top of the acetate there. I'm just going to use that other strip to make sure it's right along the top. And you want to have an even overhang at each side, and you can use your rule to check that if you're not very good at sort of measuring by eye. If you imagine the strip is the entire length of our room box, and then the acetate sits on the inside edges of the grooves, so that's why we need that bit overhanging at each side. Give that a press into place. I'm going to let that dry off for a moment and then just go along that edge and the excess there with my cocktail stick, just to remove that. And then you can glue your remaining 3mm strip along the back of this one, along the back of the acetate, so that you're sort of sandwiching the top of the acetate between the two narrow strips. Okay, so turn that over and apply glue along the other side as well. I'll spread that out with my cocktail stick. I'm trying to just sort of dot it along so I don't put too much on. Remove a little bit of that as well as I go along. Then glue your remaining strip into place. So now, using your wood glue, apply glue along the back of your wider strip. And we're then going to glue that along the top of our narrow strips, or our joined narrow strips. So sit it into place like that. Make sure you've got a nice flush front edge, and also that you're flush at the sides. I'm doing this at the wrong angle really, but just make sure you're flush along there. Nice flush sides as well. I'm just going to hold that up, and then I'll just move the camera a little bit so you can see what I'm actually doing. So I'm just sticking that along the top of those narrower strips. Give it a good press. Make sure you've got that nice flush front edge and, like I say, flush at the sides. I might just pop a clamp at each end. It's going to be difficult to clamp elsewhere, but I'll just pop one at each end. So I have actually managed to get some more clamps along there. If you just sort of fit them along the front of the strip like that, that should just hold it nicely until the glue has dried, and then we can try that into place. Okay, so the strips have now dried into place, so I'm now going to try that, and it should go in a lot easier with that strip on, which it does because it's got a bit of weight above it. That fits really nicely in there. Okay, so there is the, for now, completed room box, the build part anyway, and as I say, I'm going to be turning this into a Christmas room box, and my sort of original plan was that I would completely make it and then share it on YouTube closer to Christmas, but I thought it's probably better if I just share each step as I go along, so it won't be on a regular day or anything like that. Just as soon as I can sort of get back to this project and start decorating the inside, I'll just do short videos each time, you know, just sort of 15 minutes to half an hour, however long it takes to do sort of each individual step, and then I'll share them to YouTube as soon as they're ready. So hopefully I'll be able to get back to this within the next sort of couple of weeks. At the end of this week is my birthday, so I've got a couple of days off planned for next week, so really looking forward to that, but I will still get a couple of days in my craft room during that week. So hopefully I'll get started on the Christmas room box then, and I'm really looking forward to doing that. Now, everything that I've used in this project I've linked to in the description box below, and you can get to the description box just by clicking on that little downward arrow underneath the video, and then I've linked to all of the products. The things that you'll find in my Etsy shop are the acetate sheet and the mini clamps, and then everything else, the glues, the craft knife, the actual wood, the masking tape, and everything else that I've used to make this room box is linked to below. And that's actually the first time that I've linked to products through Amazon, and I would really appreciate it if, you know, if you do need any of the pieces, that you would click on those links below. Okay, but I'm going to let you go now. So until next time, take care. Bye.